Go back and look real quickly at portion 4 of the second worksheet. If you have it, you can look at it. If not, don't worry about it. But you may remember that we said to illustrate the principle, let's look at 8 behavioral patterns and see if you can match the behavior with the root problem. You remember that? And then we had A, lack of self-control, B, self-absorbed, C, lacked wisdom, and D, irresponsible. And then I just went through 8 different scenarios. For example, number 1, a child rarely says no to themselves. And you had to put that in the right category. They constantly squander money, spend money very impulsively. Number 3, express blatant, even exaggerated irritation when they don't get their way. Nothing is their fault, even their own anger. All chores are met with eye rolling and huffing. Makes the same mistakes and foolish decisions repeatedly. They can do nothing in moderation. Gratification is always overdone. And lastly, number 8, impatient, demands immediate attention. And, I think we all kind of grown a little bit as we think, yeah, that's my kids. In fact, most of these things I write from my own personal experience with my own children. You'll see that in today's lesson, but as I reflected on that a little bit over the week, I really kind of had to look in the mirror and ask myself, was I describing my child in those 8 things, or was I describing me with those 8 things? Can I say no to myself? Do I spend my money impulsively? Do I express blatant, even exaggerated irritation when things don't go my way? That's a big one. I see that in me a lot. Do I act as if nothing is ever my fault, even my own emotions? Guilty. I do that. All responsibilities are met with eye rolling and huffing. I know a lot of us come home from work and gripe about our boss. Is it any wonder then that our kids gripe about us when we ask them to do things? So just keep this in mind, especially today as we talk about respect. That respect is the Bible tells. Well, let's just jump right into it. Right there, you can see number 1 isn't controlling bad. Exodus 20:12. Let's get to that in a second. But right there at the first paragraph. Last week we talked about what our goal is when it comes to training our children. Do you remember what it was? It was derived from the Greek word ektrapho, or whatever, however you pronounce that. Put the answer in slot A. We looked at 15 verses in Proverbs to establish its 3 parts, and I just gave you a hint because I reread part 4 from last week. Do you remember what A was? What are we trying to instill in our children? Remember what it was? Okay. You can cheat. These are open note tests, so if you have last week's, you can do it.
Bring them up.
Bring them up, right? Bring them up is the word that is in Ephesians 6:4. That Greek word, and we're using it to mean what? Starts with an M. Maturity. There we go. Maturity. So the answer A is maturity. Think about that. Ultimately, that's what we want for our children. And remember, I gave you specifically a challenge to think about every interaction that you do with your children in terms of long-term maturity. And I told you some that I deal with. And I mentioned 2 really hot button topics like cell phones and cable television. Those are 2 things that I've taken a certain stance on in regards to how I want my children to grow in maturity. And I realize that those are very divisive things, and there's going to be people all over the map. That's why in the first lesson we said, look, if you hear something that you don't like or offends you, just try and glean something useful from it and come back next week. I'm not trying to offend anybody in here, but I'm not going to pussyfoot around topics either. I'm just going to be all out there and tell you how I parent my kids, and you can take it or leave it. But maturity is what we're aiming for in our kids. We don't want boomerang children, as Kevin Lehman calls them. If you've ever read any of Kevin Lehman's books. Kids who leave home and come back 3 years later because they can't cope in the world. So maturity is A. What were the three parts of maturity that we dug out of the book of Proverbs? Do you remember what those were?
Self-control.
Self-control is one, yes. Wisdom? Yep, very good. Wisdom. I went and did these worksheets on my own, and I wasn't going to cheat. Wisdom was the one I couldn't remember. I was having a hard time remembering. It took me a long time to remember. Self-control, wisdom, and what else? Responsibility. I think we can see on paper immediately how those three things we would love to see our children grow in each of those things, age appropriately as they get older. We can't expect our 3-year-old to solve complex math equations or anything like that. But we do want our kids to grow in wisdom, self-control, and responsibility as they get older. This week we'll talk about establishing parental control in the home. Who has control of your home? After Duke of Windsor's visit to America in 1920, he was asked what impressed him most about America. He answered, the way American parents obey their children. I actually had to read that a couple times too. And then I thought, did I write that correctly? Is that supposed to be a sarcastic remark? So I Googled it to see if he did say that, and he did say that. So he was being sarcastic, for sure. The way American parents obey their children. Isn't controlling bad a psychological no-no? And this is where we really, remember we talked last week also about kind of confronting pop psychology in our culture today with biblical wisdom. And this is a place where there's definitely some turmoil. Today some parents are afraid to keep their children under control because controlling others is purported to be a psychological no-no. Controlling, they have heard, is a type or a form of abusing. The truth, it's not abusive to control your child. It's biblical and therefore wise. The fifth commandment requires children to what? Obey. Obey or honor your father and mother. Unfortunately, this does not come naturally. Going back to our point about depravity last week. It doesn't come naturally, so early enforcement of this command falls to the parents, and God is serious about it. In fact, if you want to serve God in ministry, I love these two passages, you better have control of your kids. Someone read 1 Timothy 3, 4, and 5 out loud for us.
I got you.
Go ahead.
He must manage his own household well, with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church?
All right, so keeping his children in submission or subjection. So number 1 is A. Let's go ahead and read Titus 1:6 out loud. Who's got that?
I got it. If anyone is above reproach, the husband of one wife and his children are believers and not open to the charge of debauchery or insubordination.
Not accused of debauchery or riotous living or unruly. For those of you in here who are deacons, those should have definitely piqued your interest because that's what Paul's talking about. If you want to be a deacon, your children, we're actually going to look at your children before we decide whether you can serve in the church or not. How do you feel about that? That's pretty scary. The Bible leads us to believe that parents are to have control over their homes. What does this control look like, and what is its goal? When we envision a home in which the children are in subjection to their parents, what does this look like? Check the ones that fits. All right, before you read that, before you get into that, I actually wrote all of this today. I rewrote this whole chunk here because I think there's a lot of, going back to that first sentence about controlling parents being a psychological no-no. I think there's a lot of confusion about what bringing your children's will into subjection or having children who are in subjection to their parents looks like. And my original worksheet, you'll notice this worksheet is over 2 pages, is because I added all this. Because I want to make sure that you understand when we talk about your children being in subjection to you, that you have the right vision of what that looks like. Because we get that wrong a lot. And for example, men, when we think of Ephesians chapter 5 and 6, wives submit to your husbands, we're prone to look at that the wrong way. And so I want to make sure that when we talk about this, we know exactly what we're talking about. So let's go through some of these. If you have children who are in subjection to their parents, what does it look like? Does it look like children that walk around like robots? They know better than to think or act on their own? That's correct. No. A lot of people won't control their kids because they're worried that controlling them will turn them into robots that can't think for themselves. That's not what we're aiming for. Children understand that their opinions and feelings are not important. No, that's not it either. Children are prim and composed at all times. They only speak when spoken to. Is that what we're looking for? No, that's not what we're looking for. Your little kid, your sons are going to run around with their shirts untucked and dirt under their fingernails. Children obey immediately because they live in constant nervous fear of their parents. Now, some dads, this is the goal. This is how some dads get obedience out of. This is how some dads get submission out of their children. Is they're constantly reaching for their belt, and their kids live in constant fear. Their kids do not respect them. Their kids fear them. So if you're this kind of dad, you have to really watch out because your kids will obey you in front of you. And as soon as they're not in front of you, they will disobey you. That's why they'll be good kids until they freshman year of college, and then everything comes unglued, right? Because they've been living their whole life in fear of what daddy will do or say, but they haven't been raised to make wise, responsible decisions. So you see where we're going with that. And it's deceiving because it looks good on the outside. Your daughter got through high school. She didn't get drunk. She didn't get pregnant. So she's doing good. But it's not the same. And I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Children that don't annoy their parents with stupid questions and harebrained ideas. I was just reading a funny thing on my way to church tonight. No, I was driving at a stoplight. Funny things grandmas say, and one of them people were sharing what their grandma told them, and one of them was I drew a picture of an astronaut and told my grandma I wanted to be an astronaut someday, and she said that was the stupidest thing she'd ever heard. It's funny. I thought that was funny. But yeah, don't do that to your kids, right? And you might want to say, look, get some wisdom. Do you know how there's 6 billion people on this planet? There's like 12 astronauts. Don't do that. That maybe you're thinking that's how I'm going to teach my kid wisdom, but look, don't do that, okay? Children know that mommy and daddy are always right. No, man, that seems like a quick, easy way to get subjection out of your kids, but that will backfire on you. Because they will turn 16, 17, 18, and they will discover that you're wrong all the time about stuff, and you've been lying to them all this time. So be careful with that one. Children understand that questioning my decisions is a form of rebellion. No, your kids can question. Your kids can question you. It is not a form of rebellion to wonder why mommy and daddy are asking you to do a certain thing. There are right and wrong ways to question your parents, though. But I don't want children who obey authority without critical thinking. Personally, I don't. This is a good one. A child's eccentric or weird personality traits are nipped in the bud and eradicated. No. Alright, so far you haven't checked any of them, right? Alright? Children never question authority. Obey first, ask questions later. Again, that's not what we're looking for either. We're asking for kids who obey and honor their parents. But there are right times to question. You notice the word never. It's not cool. Some guy in a police officer's uniform tells your daughter to go into the bathroom. It's not cool. Right? We're not trying to raise kids who never question authority. She's got a freshman philosophy teacher that tells her God does not exist. We want to raise kids who are wise and who question authority, but in the right ways. All right, how about this next one? Children understand familial harmony and work to treat each other diplomatically. Oh, I like that one. That sounds good. In fact, diplomacy is a word that's used around our house a lot. Children understand familial harmony and work to treat each other diplomatically. That sounds awesome, doesn't it? How about this one? Children find comfort and predictability in consistent rules and discipline. Absolutely. That's a great way to get subjection. Through predictable, consistent rules and discipline. A lot of the reason you get no subjection to the rules and the discipline that you give is because your kid doesn't know if you're just blowing hot air this time or if you're legit. And they're going to push your buttons to find out which it is. The more consistent you are, the more comfort they can take that you are worthy of submitting to. Children have the wisdom and self-control to know when to be silly and when to be composed. Yes. I love silly kids. I want my kids to be silly all the time. And even here at church, I like for my kids to be out in the gym being silly with their friends. And a lot of adults don't like that. This is church. But that's how they fellowship. That's how they get their wiggles out. But when Pastor Jay is preaching, it's not the time to be silly and get your wiggles out. And my job as a parent is to teach them, hey, before church in the gym, be silly, have fun. When Pastor Jay was preaching, don't be silly and have fun. So, again, children have a safe place to be weird, but are still expected to be kind and responsible. And that goes against a child's eccentric or weird personality traits are in the bud. Your child is weird. Your child has weird things that they like. They like Pokemon or long hair or baggy pants or what have you. I would encourage you to let your kids be eccentric, but never at the expense of being kind and fulfilling their responsibilities. When you ask your kid to do something and they say no, and you say, well, that's just him, his eccentric personality, that's a problem. But when your son has long hair and it just eats you up inside, but he's active in his youth group, and he's friendly, he's doing good in school, and just knock it off, all right? Just chill. Children trust their parents' judgment and show it by honoring their decisions. Yeah, we want that. We want children to trust our decisions and know that we're making decisions in their best interest because we love them. Children see value in civility. Oh, this is a big one. Children see value in civility that they must give fair treatment in order to receive it. Wow. Critical. It's huge. Children thrive on the joy that comes from contributing and working hard for something. Want that? Yes, we want it. That's why we'll get to this later. When I tell my son to pick up the toys in the living room, what's the first thing I hear? I didn't drag any of them out. These aren't mine. But from there we say, well, it's not about who drove them out. It's about all of us working together to get the house cleaned up again. I pick up your stuff all the time. Your sisters pick up your stuff. We're all working together to keep the house clean. Children obey because they understand their role in the family and respect their parents. Yes, children see themselves as a part of something bigger, a family, a community, a town, a city, and not the center of everything. Obviously, that one. So I added that big chunk of things there because I wanted us all to be on the same page about what having kids in subjection to us means. I'm not talking about having kids that say that you bark a command to without a please or without any civility yourself, and they rise up and say yes ma'am, and they march and they do it. That's not the kind of subjection that we're looking for. Number 2, establishing control. Who's the trainer and who's the trainee? Why did God deem it important to train children to submit to parental authority? The optimum success of any training requires that the will of the trainee be submitted to the trainer. True or false? True. Very true. The student must submit to the teacher in order for the training process to go as it should. A child who continually pushes, whines, and sasses is actually being permitted to assume the responsibility of running a home. True or false? True. When you capitulate to your child's emotions and demands, you are sending a message to them that they are in charge. It's unlikely that a child who can't submit to outer controls will ever be able to submit to inner controls. True. And that goes back again to last week's where we talked about, the ability to say no to yourself and things like that. Number 4, consistently requiring obedience stresses children out, making them feel restless, insecure, and confused. False. But you would be surprised how much that kind of attitude is perpetuated in you. A child who has learned to submit to mom and dad will be more equipped to submit to leaders, teachers, babysitters, and most importantly, God, which is true, which is our end game. We want kids who see themselves as people who need a Savior and who will submit to the Lordship of Christ. And being able to submit to mom and dad first is a big part of that. Number 6, by challenging a child's will, but giving in before it's conquered, you actually strengthen their will and desire to disobey.
Brothers disagree. Duke it out.
That's true. You actually strengthen them. Your child's selfish motives and selfish desires, it's a muscle, really. And Angie and I go through this a lot, and I'll look for her to encouragement, and I'll say I'm not going to let them win. I'm looking for her to cheerlead me on, to not give in and let them win, because I know that if I let them win that time, they'll know, okay, here's the line I have to push Dad to get my way next time. And they will push that line. That's just how they're programmed. Kids are they're curious, and they're building their social abilities, and that's how they do it. They experiment by pushing you. And to me, it's kind of like I remember having a dog when I was in high school, and I wanted to obedience train this dog. She was my best friend. It's a great dog, and I would walk her with a leash, and when she would get out too far ahead or too far behind or too far out, I would just pop the choke chain on the leash, and after a while, it got to where I could take her for a walk and I didn't have to use the leash, and she would just walk right beside me. And I think a lot of times with our kids, once we clearly show the boundaries and set definite boundaries that this is how it is and this is what I expect to you, then it gets to where we don't have to constantly yank that chain all the time, and there's harmony and we work together. So that's why it's so important for us to be consistent and stand strong when our kids push us on certain things. Number 3, what is a child-run home? This is the one that everybody guffawed about when I said it on Sunday morning, right? What does a child-run home look like? A child-run home is one in which all decisions are made or influenced by the children. It is also a place where parents run around with their hair on fire, constantly compensating for their child's foolish decisions. Perhaps you've said or have heard others say these telltale comments. Check ones that you've been guilty of in the past. Look at this first one. I love this one. I can't make that for dinner. My kids refuse to eat it. Anybody said that? Right here. Guilty. Right here. In our home, potato soup is one of the It's good. Kyle's had Angie's potato soup. It's one of Angie's like home run meals, and we have it like twice a year because Luke refuses to eat it, and we'll literally cause him a major scene when we fix it. So we just
It's a shame that you only make it twice a year.
well, it is a crying shame. If I didn't live in a child run home, I would make it more often. Oh, look at this next one. I prepare 2 meals, one for me and my husband, and one for the kids. Do we do that? We don't do that. We do the first one, but not the second one. Miranda, have you ever heard this one? Junior's a really bright kid. That teacher's just an idiot. You heard that?
Not my baby.
Not my baby? No.
Will you go and take him home?
Alright, so if the nursery workers and the Sunday school teachers and your kid's teacher at school all have a problem with your kid, you might be him and not the teachers. This last one, or this next one, number 4. We've tried to discipline her, but she's so feisty it doesn't do any good. Oh no. Okay, so this little girl in number 4, she knows where her mom's line is and knows how to get from A to B quickly and efficiently. She knows exactly how far to push her mom to where the discipline no longer works and she gets her way. Number 5. Oh, this one kills me. It's not her birthday, but we better get her a gift too, or we'll never hear the end of it.
No, but when grandparents do that, what are you supposed to do?
Grandparents are the worst. Why do they do that garbage? I can't stand that.
Here. Am I not? Okay then.
All right, let's stop here for a second and ask. Does anybody want to weigh in and give me an opinion on why it is unwise to buy a gift for little sister when it's big brother's birthday? Why is that unwise?
Undermines the importance of that day for that child.
Good point. It undermines what?
It's not their birthday.
It's mom's birthday. Do I get a gift too? It's dad's birthday. Do I get a gift too?
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say it takes away from the specialness of the child's birthday. It really is.
Yeah.
They don't feel as special, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I want Claire and Molly to be able to fully enjoy and celebrate Luke's big day with no strings attached whatsoever. To see something nice happen to their little brother or big brother, depending on which one it is, and not say, "What about me?" And how often, and even a lot of times, when we grow up in a society where everything's fair, and let's just take it to a spiritual level, and we see God doing something in somebody else's life, it flares up, and we say, "God, why them? Why not me?" And so we'll get to this. We'll tease this out a little bit more further on.
And we would be feeding the self-absorbed part, right? That we're trying
Exactly.
to avoid.
Yeah, it feeds self-absorption. We can no longer go to a nice restaurant. Our kids always embarrass us. Yeah. This is a big one too, the next one. We can't go there. The kids will be bored to tears. Next one. We can never go out because our children don't do well with a babysitter. Yeah. The children don't do well with a babysitter. And you wonder why you've got like 6 or 7 babysitters on speed dial and none of them will pick up the phone. What is going on?
When mom will pick up the phone.
Facebook bullying.
Yeah. Somebody please. And they're all like, you don't want to keep their kids. Right? We can't, this is a big one too. We couldn't afford it, but Junior just couldn't face his friends if we didn't get him one too.
When kids start getting cars.
Yeah. How many of you have teenagers and you're hearing this? Yeah. The iPhone 7R or whatever. It's like $700. Your daughter doesn't care. She doesn't even know what $700 looks like. All she knows is that all her friends have one, and she's going to be the goob with the 4S, the small screen. And oh, I just can't have my sweet little snowflake be different from everybody else. She's unique, but not that. We can't go to church on that night because Junior complains that his Bible study is boring. Anybody hear this? I hear that all the time. In fact, I heard it just recently. Somebody I know, his sons recently got into doing drugs and stuff like that, and here was their complaint. He just doesn't like church because they're not doing really anything that can keep his attention up there. That's how he made himself feel better that this kid was in drugs. Was that the church wasn't doing anything fun or exciting? They didn't have good music or something like that.
A recent preacher just came under fire for that.
What's that? Say
A
that again?
recent pastor just came under fire for that. He said that if you don't go to a large kid or a large church where there's a big kids program, then you hate your kids and you're a bad parent.
Yeah.
Because if you go to a small church and there's nothing for them to do, then that's detrimental to their spiritual health. Some preacher that's recently, I can't remember his name, but he's under a lot of fire for that comment.
Well, this is just this. Well,
He's a little bit more orthodox than Joel Osteen.
but look, if you think about it, these things that we're talking about, maturity, the parent's responsibility of building maturity in their child through responsibility and wisdom and self-control. Really, when you think about it, that's what a youth pastor should be doing for his teenagers. And how many of you really see that in many of the youth ministries that you see around town? Not really. Youth pastors' MO is fun. All those other things we mentioned out the window. It's about eating more goldfish, having more pizza, stuffing more marshmallows in your mouth. And so when kids graduate from youth ministry and they go off to college, they immediately leave church. Because church for them is not really about learning or being mature or building your spiritual inner self. Handing your authority over to your child is dangerous. Manipulating outcomes so that your child never faces the consequences of foolish behavior can be devastating in the long run. When we cater to our child's selfish desires and me-centered tendencies, we're failing to prepare them for reality. We end up raising kids that are perpetually immature and can't cope in the real world. Match the beginning of the sentence with the end of the sentence. So this is kind of fun, right? So the first one, letting a child make all the family decisions sends the wrong message to our kids that what? I'll just go ahead and tell you. The first one is E, just to get us started. E. All right, so I'm going to read that sentence. Reflect on this. Letting a child make all the family decisions. So what does that look like? Where are we going to eat tonight? Where are we going to vacation? What are we going to have for dinner tonight? What movie are we going to watch as a family tonight? Just go through the whole line. Letting a child make all the family decisions sends the wrong message to our kids that nothing should happen without their input, that their opinion is paramount. Why is that dangerous? Because look, they're gonna get older, they're gonna leave home, and then they're gonna live in a world where people don't give two flips about their opinion, and they have to learn to have a good attitude and roll with certain things. Right? Can I get an amen?
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Man, that one's hard too when your kid is young to explain when they can have an opinion and when they can't. Because I know that's something we had to break really early because I'm a talker, obviously, and so I would always talk to Braxton and ask his opinion on things, and then I had to kind of remind him he doesn't get to make the decisions.
Yeah.
We're just letting him have an opinion.
Yeah.
That can be difficult when they're young.
That's great. That's great that you mentioned that, though. Sometimes it's good to let your kid have their opinion and then not go with it. You know, but I like letting my kids share their opinions. Just Friday night, where are we going for dinner? You know, Molly wanted to go to Hungry Howie's. Luke wanted to go to Steak and Shake. So we took a family vote, and Claire cast the deciding vote to go to Steak and Shake. And so Molly didn't get her way, and I am totally cool with that. We didn't go to Steak and Shake and then run by Hungry Howie's on the way home so Molly could get her stuff. You know, we all as a family went to Steak and Shake. I'm not saying that it's not good to let your child have an opinion, but when you when you're like frozen with fear, doing something outside your child's opinion, you got a problem. Focusing all your energy on making sure they are constantly happy and fulfilled sends the wrong message to our kid that every moment in life must be happy and fulfilling, or something must be wrong. Yeah, this goes back to church. You know, if your kid thinks that youth group is supposed to always be about pizza and fog machines and loud music, how are they going to transition to a quiet Bible study in somebody's living room and get anything out of it? I mean, this is not exciting. This isn't titillating. So therefore, it must not be any fun. Or even I had this discussion with Claire just this past week. She was complaining that she had a teacher that doesn't make science and biology exciting and fun and interesting like another teacher does with history. And I just had to tell her, I said, well, Claire, your responsibility is to learn it, whether it's fun and exciting and interesting or not. It's information that you need. It's information to make you smarter. It's information to help you pass a test that you're going to have in a few weeks. And yeah, it's cool and stuff can be fun and exciting sometimes, but there's going to be long stretches of your life where things aren't fun and exciting, and you have to man up and do them anyway.
I had the same conversation last Saturday night with Anderson. We made him go to Abigail's dance showcase, and it's like, this is boring. I hate this. Is it halftime yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he called it at halftime. I was like, things aren't always going to be fun. That's what I told him. I said, she comes to your games, football, baby basketball, a lot more than you have to come to a dance recital. So
Yeah, it's good. We don't want to send a message to our kids that if it's not fun and exciting, then it's not worth our time. Because there are a lot of great things in life that are not fun and exciting. Protecting a child from the consequences of protecting a child from the consequences of bad behavior sends the wrong message to your kids that bad decisions won't sorry for the typo, won't ever catch up with you. Yeah. Right. You have parents who pay for their kids' speeding tickets. You have parents who take their side when they come head to head with a teacher. You have all sort of situations where parents won't let a kid deal with the consequences of some bad decisions that they've made, and so they live in this augmented reality where they can just kind of run roughshod over everybody and everything without any real damage to themselves. If your child drops their phone and breaks their screen, make them pay for the next one. If your kid gets a speeding ticket, make him pay for it. If the teacher reprimands your kid and makes him do something, take the teacher's side. Help your kids deal with the responsibilities for their bad behavior. Acting as if every situation must be catered to my child's specific preferences sends the wrong message to our kids that, we should never have to endure situations that we don't enjoy. To me, that's a big one when it comes to food. Going back to, I prepare 2 meals, one for me and the husband and one for my kids. When Luke says, but I don't like macaroni and cheese, or I don't like potatoes. I don't like potatoes. Look, you guys, he's really amazing because now he eats everything but potato soup and mashed potatoes. He eats scalloped
He eats
potatoes.
it. He just doesn't like it.
He doesn't like it. Right.
Dad.
Right. Look, so we're not to food. We're not to the chapter on food yet. But I'll just go ahead and tell you. I'll give you a peek into my world for a minute as a parent. You as parents, you have to. Part of your job description as a parent is to decide what are molehills and what are mountains. There are some things that are very important to you that are not important to the next parent. And sometimes those things are really arbitrary or subjective. And if you're one of these parents who says, I'm not going to force my kid to eat anything that they don't want to eat, you actually have a lot of child development books and textbooks on your side. There are a lot of great pediatricians and child psychologists that tell you you should not make your kids eat something that they don't want to eat. However, for me, particularly, that is a mountain for me because it's not about food. For me, it's about this. It's about trying to make sure my child doesn't think that every time something is set in front of him as a gift, it needs to be all about him and his personal preferences. And if something is given to him that he doesn't like, that he can reject it unthankfully. My mother-in-law gave Luke a Lego pack of Mixels that he already had. When he opened it up, he said, I already have this one. He threw it on the floor. I was mortified. And when a kid rejects groceries that my wife has worked hard to pay for and to prepare, it's the same thing to me. I don't like this. Get it out from in front of me. So it's not really about catering to a child's preferences, or it's not really about food for me. It's about teaching a kid that, hey, it's not about you. That's food that your mom has worked hard for and prepared. It's good for you. It's nutritional. And pretty soon you might go on a missions trip where you're sitting in front of a Tanzanian who has prepared a very expensive meal for you. And you've got a family who has taught you to be able to eat a wide variety of things, even if you're not crazy about how they taste. You can eat them and be thankful for them. That's what it is for me. And some of you may say, well, I'm not going to do that with my kid. It just makes dinner time too terrible. And to that I would say, well, to each his own. You may find when your kid gets 13, 14, 15, their palate just kind of matures on its own and they start eating tomatoes and broccoli and everything just because as you get older, you tend to like some foods more. But I also know a lot of kids who are older in college and they don't ever touch vegetables. They eat chicken nuggets and macaroni only. So to me, it's a roll of the dice. So when pediatricians say don't make them eat that because they'll probably grow into it when they're older, I'm like, I know too many kids who've done it. So I'm going to work. And I just told Angie this the other night. We had broccoli Monday night, I think. We had broccoli Monday night. Luke never made a piece. He just ate all 3 pieces. And you don't know what a celebration was. We were like cheering because 2 years ago that would have been tears, snot, 2 hours, just getting it in. And he's real funny when he eats stuff he doesn't like. He barely holds his fork. We were teasing him because he won't hold his fork, and then he'll wrap his lips around his teeth. And we're just consistently saying, look, dude, if you want to play the Wii and you want sweets tonight, you got to eat 3 pieces of broccoli. My thinking is, if you really hate it that badly, then living without the Wii and the sweets is not that big of a deal. But he really wants the Wii and he really wants the sweets, and what we found is that as he eats these things, he gets used to them, and pretty soon he's eating them without any issue. That's a mountain
So what age do
for
you
me.
start making them eat? Because I
So
try
what?
to force. What age do you start making them eat? Because I got Joey's age.
Oh, yeah. Luke is almost choked on some stuff. But Sadie, it's funny too because I used to say parents who have picky kids, they're training their kids to be picky, and then God laughed at me and gave me Luke. It was picky right off the breast. Like right when he came off the breast, nothing. Everything was coming right back out. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I need to change a little bit on that. But you know your kid. already with Sammy, we're having to like work on this stuff, and it's hard. It makes every dinner time really a pain in the rear. Like stuff we know he likes, and we eat it just to like show us he's not going to eat it. You know, so it's different for everybody. Let's go to the next one. Groveling and working your tail off to earn your child's approval sends the wrong message to our kids that everyone must work hard to win my approval. Constantly questioning authority figures that confront your child's behavior sends the wrong message to your children that D, people in authority shouldn't be respected or obeyed. Do not send that message to some teacher or youth pastor will really appreciate it if you do not send that message to your kids. Making sure that everybody gets a prize and that everything always feels fair sends the wrong message to our kids that see life is fair. Hey, wake up. Life is not fair. Sometimes the person who didn't deserve it gets their promotion, and you got to be able to roll with it and trust the Lord that He's in control. Number 4, having your child's respect. Children can sense an intimidating parent from a mile away. True or false? True, they can. They're like little animals. They know it. They sense fear. Which of the following behaviors are red flags of an intimidated parent? Dreads making the child mad at them. Check. Diffuses fits with toys and treats. Check. Says in his heart, please don't hate me. Check. That's Angie right there. Oh yeah, I'm gonna pull her dirty laundry out. Every time Angie drops the hammer on the kids, she's like, I just don't want them to be mad at me. Extensively explains all commands. Oh, now that's me. So you got 4 fingers pointing back at me on that one. I give my kids way too much room to explain stuff that they know they just need to obey and do. Concludes commands with, okay? Prefers to negotiate. That's me too. I'm bad about that. Tries to cheer a child up after discipline. Check. Treats discipline like a last-ditch option effort. Check. Hopefully. Oh, let me tell you. I do that a lot. Look, last night when I came into the house, I've been going over this stuff, and a refresher course for me, and I had already studied this stuff, and so last night when I got home, or when we came back inside from playing outside, usually when I get home from work, we hang around outside for a little while and play, push on the swing, that kind of stuff. We got inside, I went to put something away in Claire's room, and the shirt that she had been wearing was laying in the middle of her bedroom floor. And this is something we go around and around with all the time. You can't take an article of clothing off and throw it in the middle of the floor. If it's dirty, put it in the dirty clothes. If you're going to wear it later, set it to the side somewhere, or put it away. But that's like too much to ask. So anyway, it was on the floor, so I just said, all right, I'm gonna follow my own worksheet here. So I went out and I said, Claire, you're not having dessert tonight. What? Why? And I said, well, because the shirt you were just wearing 5 minutes ago was laying in the middle of your bedroom floor, so no dessert tonight. Dad, okay, and then the meltdown starts. Dad, I didn't think, it didn't cross my mind. And here's what I said. I told her, I said, when you were taking that shirt off and you were dropping it on the floor, you were thinking to yourself, I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm doing it anyway. And she said, no, Dad, it didn't even cross my mind. I said, then that's my problem. If after all these years we've gone over this again and again and again, and I have done such a poor job disciplining you and dealing with this issue that you can still, after 2 years, drop an article of clothes on the floor without the thought even crossing your mind that this is out of bounds, then I've failed you as a father. So we're going to fix it right now. You're not getting dessert tonight. And that way, if you want to throw your clothes on the floor, you can go for it, but you need to do it knowing the risk that if my dad walks past my room and sees this sitting here, he will consistently discipline me every time. So I'll let you know how that pans out. So hopefully you checked every one of these behaviors. They all send a signal to your child that you aren't worth respecting. Think about this. We as adults do not learn well from those we don't respect, whether it is our pastor, our boss, or our spouse. Children, a kid who grows up in a child-run home is just going to make a really terrible spouse. I'm just telling you. You are dooming somebody to a horrible life if you're raising a child in a child-run home. Turning the tide in a child-run home won't come until a parent stops trying to win their child's approval and starts trying to make himself or herself respectable. talking about honoring your mother and father. It'd be really great if you as a parent will work with some honor. When you interact with your child, aim at getting their respect, not their approval. If you aim for your child's respect, the approval will come eventually. Parents who aim for approval will likely get neither respect nor approval in the long run. So keys to establishing control. So how are we doing on time? Are we out of time?
It is 7:36.
Oh boy. Okay, let's burn through this real quick so we don't have to cover this next week. How is control in the home gotten and kept? Finish the sentence below. Keep your objective in mind. Subjection of their flesh. A. You're not trying to gain their love. You're not trying to be a fun parent. You're not just aiming for peace and quiet, although that's great. Number 2, blank, quick and good-natured obedience. Hope for, bribe, require, unrealistic. It's unrealistic to demand my kids to give me quick and good-natured obedience. What do you think? C. All right. Number 3, teach child to obey without being told. 1, 2, 3. You're cruising for bruising. What? D. The answer is D. Why?
Okay, you just said a while ago that they could question authority, so I'm a little confused as to what you're, I mean, I understand what you're saying, you don't want them to go and, you know, it's like we're talking about the policeman, you know, it may not be a policeman, but I'm hearing a contradiction here about the questioning.
Yeah,
I mean,
there is, because it's both. It's not either or, it's both and. Your child knows that they are expected to obey without asking why, but that doesn't mean you never tell your children why, or you never show them. Sometimes I'll tell Claire, you can't do that, and she'll ask me why, and I'll give her a very clear and reasoned response. And let me just tell you, if you tell your kid no, and you don't have a clear reasoned response, be ready to change your mind.
I grew up in the era where it was because I said so.
Right.
You know.
And that's
and
a great
I try
point.
not to do that
Yeah.
with my children. But however,
Exactly.
Dr. J has said in the pulpit, delayed obedience is no obedience. So, I mean, do you let them question, and then if they decide that's a good enough answer, they obey, or do you know, how do you handle that?
That's a great
The
point.
questioning.
What we don't want to, and why we did that big long chunk in the very beginning, what we're not looking for with subjection, is we're not trying to create authoritarian homes that say, you obey, and the reason is because I said so. Don't ever ask your kids to do something that you don't have a good reason for. If the best you can come up with is because I said so, you're doing something wrong. But after a consistent time of giving your kids good reasons for doing what they do, right, they grow to a place where they can trust your judgment and know when it's okay to ask why and when it's not. If Claire asks, why can't I go, well, we just have this situation, why can't I go spend the night with so-and-so? And she said, why? And I said, well, that's because we're going to your grandma's house to celebrate your mom's birthday. She said, well, I could do both. And I said, no, that's gonna be your mom's night. We're all as a family, we're gonna celebrate your mom's birthday together. You're not gonna come hang out for 20 minutes and then go do your own thing.
So you're saying, like, when it's an immediate thing that needs to be done, no questioning there. But if it's something like that you can sit down and talk about, then that's where the questioning part comes
Right,
in.
this is where your parental judgment and good sense comes in, and you have to make that decision. I think you're totally right, and we went over that the first week. What are some things that your parents did that you swore you'd never do? One of those is because I said so. My dad fortunately never said that. My dad rarely ever told me because I said so do. My dad usually always had a good reason for what he was asking me to do that. What he was
Because I
asking
work
me to
in
do.
a public school system, and when I tell a child to do something, it is very, very aggravating when they look at me and go, why?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want back talk. I told you to do something, you need to get over there and do it right now. Like I said, I try not, and it's just disrespectful to me, you know.
I think it's when they know what they're supposed to be doing that they shouldn't ask why.
It's like, why? Go clean up your room.
Right.
Why?
That's
They
the
know the
kind of
answer.
thing
Yeah,
that.
just saying it.
Exactly. There's a big difference between go clean up your room and no, you can't go over to so-and-so's house Friday night. One of those you can explain why. The other one you can look at and say,
You know.
Well, they're
You know.
trying to reason, you wanna teach them, let them think.
That's just a hard one for me, like
It is
the,
very
the
hard.
line, you know, you gotta, there's a fine line there, you gotta be careful.
and there's no silver bullet on that one. And sometimes the dad's going to be real strict and the mom's going to be real soft, and vice versa, you know. But in your parental wisdom, here's what we're always going to point back to. In your parental wisdom, when you decide whether your kid needs to obey immediately or ask why, let your ultimate goal of maturity and wisdom and responsibility and self-control, you know, use that as you look at the situation. If I sit here and argue with her as to why, am I perpetuating immaturity or is telling her why going to explain to her that I have a well thought out reason for what she's doing? So
Being careful to explain why and not being expected every time.
right.
Because then they're telling you.
Let's burn through these last ones because I know your kids are probably looking for you. Honey, please play on the other side of the house. The baby is asleep. Okay, Mom. I'm sure you've heard all these, but Mom, I'll be real quiet. Played here before. You never really had any fun. Parental instructions. Son, I'd like you to pick up the toys that are on the living room floor, but I didn't drag any of them out. That's Luke.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Oh, or this hyperbole, I love it. How come I always have to pick up the toys, right? I will as soon as I'm done beating this level. That's Luke 2. That's verbatim. Verbatim. I don't want to. That's Luke 2. He says that all the time, but I don't want to. Like as if I'm going to say, oh, okay, we'll forget it.
Okay, go
All right.
This is being honest.
Sweetie, that broccoli is good for you. Please eat it before you get down. That crap is disgusting. No way, I'll never eat that. Grr, that's Luke. He makes the grunting noises. Why would you fix it if you know I don't like it? That's a child run response. All right, guys.